Today I'm going to be making my favorite blueberry muffins. These muffins use a pretty similar template to my other muffin recipes, and they're really good. They have like a nice balance of sweet and crunchy on the outside and nice and soft in the middle. So if you're looking for a good blueberry muffin recipe, give these a try. All right, let's get started. So I'm going to start with the dry ingredients, and we need 1.5 cups of flour. I like to use a combination of white and whole wheat, or white whole wheat actually. I like this because it just balances. We're getting a little bit of fiber and extra nutrients from the whole wheat flour, but it's not so dense that my kids will complain. They tend to like that balance. It makes it a little lighter and fluffier to do some of the white flour too. So if you have these types of flours, feel free to do that. If not, use the flour that you use in your household. For the most part, any flour is going to work fine. The only flour that acts quite different is an almond flour because it's much more dense. And so if you use that, you'll want to do kind of some of your own work in terms of that balance. All right, I'm going to do 1 cup of my white whole wheat flour. And white whole wheat flour is very similar to whole wheat flour from a nutrition standpoint, but it's a little lighter in taste and texture. And then I'll do my 1/2 cup from the white. With measuring spoons, it's hard to cut 1.5 cups in half easily this way. So I usually just go with whatever I'm feeling that day. All right, 1.5 cups of flour. And then we need 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder and baking soda. If for some reason you only have one of these on hand, you can use just a teaspoon of that, whatever you have on hand. It's probably going to come out okay. The amount of rise you get will just be a little bit different. Baking soda requires an acid to activate it, and we have lemon juice in here that's going to do that. But then I just like the balance of using both of them. I think we get a nice rise. Okay, and then 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And that's all we have for dry. Pretty simple. Give that a stir. Okay, so for wet ingredients, the thing I want to start with is making our kind of homemade buttermilk. Let me grab my milk. Okay, so we need 1/2 cup of buttermilk, but I don't have buttermilk on hand. I find I don't use it enough to buy a large container of it, so I just make it. And the way I like to do it in this recipe, I often use vinegar to make buttermilk, but in this I use lemon juice because I want that lemon flavor with the blueberries. And so I'm going to put 2 teaspoons of lemon juice in here. So I just fill my 1/2 cup with milk, but a little bit less than the top, and then add the lemon juice in there. And then you just want to let that sit. You could give it a little stir if you want to, but we want to let that sit for a couple minutes for the lemon juice to kind of curdle up the milk, which sounds gross, but it works really well in baking. All right, so as that is sitting, we'll get the rest of our ingredients. We need an egg. And 1/3 cup of oil, which I've got pre-measured here. I'm using canola oil, which works well in baking. It's a heart-healthy oil. You could also use a light olive oil. You could use an avocado oil if there's another oil you have. But those are kind of the 3 primary heart health oils that work really well in baking. I need a teaspoon of vanilla. If you don't have vanilla on hand, it's okay to leave it out. I know it can be an expensive ingredient, and sometimes you might have it, sometimes you might not. It's a little flavor enhancer, but it'll be okay without it. And we need 1/2 cup of sugar. Let's see if I have another 1/2 cup here. Just using plain old white sugar. Okay, and then I'm going to get my buttermilk in here. Okay. The nice thing about muffins that I like from a baked good perspective is that they use a heart healthy oil versus butter. Oftentimes, baked goods will primarily be made with a lot of butter, which in moderation, tastes great and can be nice. But if it's something we're consuming regularly, a lot of butter is high in saturated fat and it's not as good for heart health. So if you can find recipes like this, which is the enjoyment of a baked good but has a heart healthy oil in it, just a little more supportive of our health. All right, wet ingredients are done. Let's get the dry in here. Meanwhile, while you're making this, we will want to preheat the oven to 350. I'm going to do that now. Okay, and just stir this until it is combined. Want to be careful with over mixing something like muffins or quick breads because it can kind of make them gummy and it's not as enjoyable a texture. So mix until you don't see any more flour. Okay, and it's normal that your batter will be a little on the thicker side because we're adding the fruit that's going to kind of loosen it up a little bit. All right, I have a cup of frozen blueberries that I have set out to thaw a little bit. Last time I made this recipe, I put the blueberries right in from the freezer, which was okay, but it did require me to cook them longer. And I think the edges of the muffin got a little overcooked to get those blueberries really cooked. So thaw your blueberries a little bit, either in the microwave or just sit them out if you're using frozen. Otherwise, fresh will work here as well. If they're thawed a lot, you are going to get a purple swirl in here as you mix them in, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different look. All right, and again, just kind of give those a fold in. They don't need a real strong stir. All right, batter is done. So for cooking them, you could use regular size muffin tins. You could use the mini ones. I'm using a silicone muffin tin pan. I bought this a couple years ago, and I do find it's a little easier to clean than the metal one. I was often scrubbing my metal one to get things off of it. This has been helpful, and then I am using these kind of parchment paper muffin wraps, which is just another way to make the cleanup a little bit easier. All right. So just fill these up usually about 3/4 full is going to give you the size. I find I usually get about 10 muffins out of this recipe. It doesn't usually make the full 12. But again, that will depend on how much you fill them up. I think muffins have gotten a bad reputation over the years, primarily from the kind of store-bought ones that you might get at the grocery store or at a coffee shop that are quite large and often quite sweet. They really mimic more of a cake than a muffin. And again, those kind of once in a while can be delicious, but eating them all the time might not make you feel your best or really give you the balance of nutrition that you might be looking for. But homemade muffins are really quite different. You see us using whole natural ingredients here. We've got nutrients in here from the whole grains and the heart healthy oils. We've got some great fruit in here. So really they can be a nice balanced option for a breakfast, a quick grab and go, or snacks. All right, I'm filling these up a little more just because I had 9 wrappers and I'm gonna stick with that. And so mine might be a little over full, but that's okay. They might just require an extra minute or two. All right, these are going to cook for about 22 to 24 minutes. I always would recommend you start on the lower end for your timer and then check them. Make sure the centers are nice and solid. When you push down, you want them to pop up rather than being kind of doughy there. So I will get those in and I'll show you what they look like when they're done. Our muffins are out of the oven. Mine did take about 27 minutes. I think I had filled them a little extra because I only made 9 instead of 10, and my blueberries were still a little bit frozen. And so just keep that in mind, double check, check the middle and make sure it's still not battery. But they look delicious, they smell delicious, They come out really easily with the muffin liners on here. Let's just open one of these up and show you what we've got. Nice kind of crunchy top, soft center. They're still warm and steamy. Yummy. We like a lot of blueberries in ours. They smell delicious. They look delicious. These will stay fresh for about, I'd give them like 3 days on the counter. Otherwise, I like to get them in the freezer, and I just find that once you defrost them or put them in the microwave from there, they really hold their moisture rather than drying out if you keep them on the counter too long. But great snack, great breakfast, just a great recipe to try if you enjoy a muffin.